When my son told me I wouldn't be welcome at his house for Christmas, I smiled, got into my car, and made a phone call. By New Year's, I had canceled their mortgage payment. And that was only the beginning of my plan. Justice had to be restored, and arrogance had to be punished. You won't believe what I did next. Before we go on, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Maybe this year I could make my famous turkey, I said, leaning deeper into Michael's leather sofa. The one stuffed with sage-scented filling your mom used to love. Remember how she always said it tasted better than Grandma's? My words hung in the warm air between us, mingling with the scent of Isabella's expensive vanilla candles. Michael shifted beside me, the light from their 12-foot Christmas tree dancing off his wedding band. Something in his posture changed. His shoulders squared like he was bracing for impact. Dad, unfortunately, you won't be welcome here for Christmas. The words hit like a slap. I blinked, thinking surely I misheard. What do you mean? Why wouldn't I be welcome? Michael couldn't meet my eyes. His gaze clung to the marble coffee table, the same one I helped him pick out last spring when Isabella decided their old furniture wasn't refined enough. Isabella's parents are coming, and they'd rather you not be here. My hand went cold. They'd rather it that way. It's just easier this way, Dad. You know how much her family values tradition. They have their own way of doing things. His voice shrank with every word, like he was curling into himself. I looked around the living room, at the silk drapes I paid for after Isabella complained about privacy, at the hardwood floors from my second mortgage, at the crown molding that maxed out my credit card. Every inch of this house bore my fingerprints, my sacrifices, my love for my son. You're going to live life your own way, I repeated slowly. In what way is that, Michael? He flinched. Dad, please don't make this harder than it already is. Through the kitchen arch, I saw Isabella's new KitchenAid mixer, the professional grade one she insisted on having for the 3-week holiday baking spree. $2,000 of my money probably used twice since October. So where would I spend Christmas then? The question slipped out softer than I meant it to. Michael's face fell. Maybe you could, I don't know. Maybe visit Aunt Rosa, or we could do something next weekend. Next weekend, as if Christmas were just another appointment that could be rescheduled for convenience. I stood up, knees trembling from the ache of 8 years carrying this burden alone. I understand, son, I said. Wait. But I was already walking toward the door, past the family photos where my face grew smaller and further with each frame, past the coat closet overflowing with Isabella's designer winter wear. My hand gripped the doorknob, cold, rigid, unwelcoming. Tell Isabella's parents, I said, not turning around. Merry Christmas. The December air slapped my face like a wave as I walked toward my truck. Behind me, I heard Michael call my name once, then the soft click of the door shutting. Final. Absolute. I sat in the driver's seat for a while, engine off, watching the glittering Christmas lights in windows of houses I would never be welcomed in. My phone rang. Maybe it was Michael, hoping to patch things up with hollow apologies and the dull ache of guilt. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned the key and drove into the dark, leaving behind the warmth of a home I had bought, but would never belong in. The heater groaned in the December chill as I wound through the familiar streets toward my house. South Hills stretched around me, each corner soaked in memories of the man I used to be. The man who believed family was everything. The man who gave everything just to see his son smile. That man was a fool. I stopped at the red light on 29th and Grinnell, watching a young father loading Christmas gifts into an SUV. His kids pressed their faces to the window, breath fogging the glass in excitement. Once upon a time, that was Michael and me. Before Isabella came into the picture, before I became nothing more than a walking ATM with inconvenient emotions, the numbers started buzzing in my head like a broken slot machine. $2,800 a month for 5 years. My calculator gave up trying to compute the total last spring when I finally added it all up. $140,000. More than Maria and I had saved for our entire retirement. Gone. All of it. Gone. I hit the gas harder than necessary when the light turned green. The truck growled in agreement with my mood. 5th Street. That's where I refinanced my house. Our house, Maria's and mine, to make the down payment. The loan officer looked at me with the kind of pity I didn't recognize at the time. "Mr. Flores, are you sure? You're putting a lot of risk on someone else's investment." Someone else's investment? Not my son's future? Not my family's security? Someone else's investment. Lincoln Street, the bank where I took out a second mortgage when Michael lost his job 2 years ago. "Just temporary, Dad," he'd said, "until I get back on my feet." Isabella stood behind him, her $700 handbag slung over her shoulder, nodding sympathetically while calculating exactly how much my desperation was worth. Not much. Turns out my desperation wasn't worth much to them. I pulled into the driveway, the cracked concrete path I couldn't afford to fix because every spare cent vanished into their suburban dream. The porch light flickered, another repair I'd postponed. Inside, the house felt hollow without Maria's laughter, without the warmth of family gatherings that would never happen again. My phone rang just as I was fumbling for my keys, the shrill sound echoing through the empty walls like a ghost that refused to leave. Isabella's name lit up on the screen, probably calling to explain, in her ever so subtle way, why I wasn't worthy of her parents' refined sensibilities. Perfect timing. I'd been waiting 5 years for this conversation. I let it ring until the 4th chime, long enough for her to wonder if I'd even pick up. "Dennis," she cooed, her voice dripping with that familiar, fake sweetness. The same tone she used whenever she needed help paying the water bill or property taxes. I heard about the little misunderstanding with Michael. Misunderstanding. I leaned against the kitchen counter, still in my coat. "I don't think there was a misunderstanding, Isabella. You made your position pretty clear. Look, I know this sounds harsh, but you have to understand my parents' perspective," she continued, as though delivering a lecture from some moral high ground. "They're very traditional people. They expect a certain atmosphere during the holidays." "A certain atmosphere," I repeated. "And what kind of atmosphere would that be?" Silence. I could hear shopping bags rustling in the background, probably full of things bought with money that should have gone to the mortgage, which apparently was still my responsibility. "They're not used to your kind of cooking, Dennis. All that spicy Mexican food and loud music. And frankly," she added with a pause that felt rehearsed, "they're educated people. They expect conversation about current events, literature, art. You know, things that matter. Words carry more weight than fists." 8 years. 8 years of biting my tongue, of swallowing every passive-aggressive jab for the sake of Michael, pretending not to notice the way she looked at me, like I was some live-in help she barely tolerated. "My cooking," I said evenly, voice low and controlled. "You mean the food you ate every Sunday for 3 years when we were broke? The tamales you said reminded you of your grandmother?" Her silence was telling. "That was different," she finally said. "Back then we were grateful. But now, well, now I have my parents. Now that her parents are around, she couldn't possibly let a Mexican farmhand embarrass her at her precious dinner table." The fake sweetness had vanished. "Don't be dramatic, Dennis. This isn't about race. It's about class. My father graduated summa cum laude from Washington State. My mother speaks 4 languages. They summer in the Hamptons." "And exactly what would you bring to the dinner conversation?" she asked. "Tile work?" My chest flared hot, but I kept my voice steady. "I built a business from nothing after your grandfather died. I've employed over 50 people. I've paid more in taxes than your father made in his prime. Money isn't everything, Dennis. Parenting matters. Education matters. And frankly, Maria knows her place better than you do." The line went quiet. She had crossed a line. One I didn't even know existed until she stomped over it in her designer heels. "What did you just say about my wife?" "I'm just saying she blends in better. She doesn't cause waves. She understands that some spaces just aren't meant for us." My hand clenched around the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. "Maria's pinky finger has more elegance than your entire bloodline." "Oh, please. She's a lucky maid. At least she's smart enough to keep quiet." "Isabella." My voice dropped, filled with something I didn't fully recognize. "I want you to listen very carefully. This conversation ends here. We're done pretending to be family." "You can't just," she started, but I cut her off. I repeated myself and ended the call. I carefully set the phone down on the counter, my hands surprisingly steady. The kitchen around me felt smaller, somehow cleaner, like a weight had been lifted from the air. I walked to the desk in the corner and pulled out the manila folder I had been avoiding for months. Bank statements, mortgage documents, 5 years of automatic transfers that drained me while they lived like royalty. It was time to end this. Part 4. First decision: cancel the mortgage. The documents lay scattered on the kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. 5 years of bank statements, each one showing the same recurring transfer. $2,800 on the 15th of every month, disappearing from my account into theirs. A paper trail of my own stupidity. I pulled out a calculator and started adding. Year 1, $33,600. Year 2, another $33,600. By the third year, I had stopped buying new clothes. In the fourth, I started shopping at discount grocery stores. This year, the fifth, I've been living on peanut butter sandwiches for lunch just to scrape by. $400. Not counting the down payment. Not counting the times I paid their utility bills when Isabella's shopping addiction spun out of control. Not to mention the new roof, the landscaping, the essential furniture for their perfect little life. I sat back in the chair and stared at the numbers until they blurred. Maria's life insurance, my retirement savings, the college fund we built for nieces and nephews I may never get to meet, all of it gone, poured into a house I wasn't even welcome in for Christmas dinner. I reached for my phone, scrolling through contacts until I found the number for my bank. The automated voice offered options in English and Spanish. How thoughtful, how accommodating for people like me. Customer service. This is Jennifer. How can I help you today? I need to cancel an automatic transfer, I said, my voice steadier than it had been in years. Yes, sir, she replied. I'll need your account number and a few pieces of identifying information, she said. I recited the numbers clearly while I listened to her typing on the other end. Professional, efficient, and most comforting of all, not the least bit curious why a 62-year-old man was canceling a mortgage payment that probably wasn't even his. Got it, Mr. Flores. $2,800 monthly to Wells Fargo. Account ending in 7423. How long have you been making this transfer? 5 years. The words tasted bitter as I said them. And would you like to cancel it immediately? I looked around my kitchen at the old appliances I couldn't afford to replace, the walls that needed painting, the windows leaking cold air because I used the renovation money to build someone else's dream. Yes, effective immediately, I said. Done. The transfer has been canceled. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No, I said, surprised by how kind that word sounded in my own voice. No, that's all. I hung up and sat in the sudden stillness of the house. Outside, the December dark was settling in over Spokane. Christmas lights twinkled in windows across the street, where families gathered with unconditional warmth. No judgment, no pretending, no masks. For the first time in 5 years, next month's budget was balanced. For the first time since Maria died, I could afford to fix the porch light, stock the fridge with proper groceries, maybe even take a vacation. I gathered the bank statements, the mortgage papers, every last piece of evidence of my so-called generosity. Then I walked to the fireplace, struck a match, and watched 5 years of silent suffering turn to ash. The heat of the flames kissed my face, warmer than anything I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed with a message, probably Michael apologizing, or Isabella, needing money for something essential like new throw pillows. I didn't check. Instead, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey, the one I'd saved for a special occasion that never seemed to come. Tonight was special. I raised my glass to the empty room, to Maria's photo above the mantel, to the man I used to be, and the man I was becoming. Merry Christmas, I said, and I meant it. Part 5. Isabella's audacity. The next morning was clear, with December sun filtering softly through the kitchen windows as I sipped my second cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I didn't have to calculate how much would disappear from my account 3 days from now. Freedom tasted better than Colombian roast. Ian's blend, the one I finally allowed myself to buy. My phone rang at exactly 10:47 a.m. Isabella's name flashed on the screen like a siren. Dennis. Her voice carried that familiar edge of urgency, sharpened by habit. I need you to pick up my parents at Spokane Airport. Their flight from Portland lands at 2. I gently set the cup down and watched the steam curl toward the ceiling. Isabella, did you forget our conversation yesterday? I asked. Listen, whatever that was about, now we need to focus on practical matters, she said. Your parents need a ride and you're the only one available during the day. Bold, unbelievable. Less than 24 hours after telling me I didn't deserve to eat Christmas dinner with her family, she wanted me to be their private driver. And you ask me why, Dennis? Because that's what families do. They help each other. Her voice was sharp, clipped, carrying that familiar irritation, like I was the stubborn mess that wouldn't go away. Let's be honest. You're not my opponent. You're too weak to be my opponent. So just get in your truck and go pick them up. That was it, an insult sealed inside a command. Which airline? I asked softly, my pride shrinking like an overwashed shirt. Alaska Air, flight 447. They'll be at baggage claim number 3. And then, like always, she couldn't resist the twist. Dennis, they're expecting someone who can handle their luggage properly. Don't embarrass us. I could hear her fingernails tapping on something hard. Granite, maybe. Probably that countertop she insisted on when laminate suddenly wasn't elegant enough for her parties. A countertop I paid for. Of course. Of course, I said. I'll take care of everything. Good. And wear something decent. Maybe that blue shirt I wore to Michael's graduation. They notice things like that. Then, click. The line went dead. No goodbye, no thank you. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the blank phone screen. 2 p.m., flight 447. Baggage claim, carousel number 3. I glanced at the clock above the sink. 10:52 a.m., plenty of time. I poured myself another cup of coffee, added a spoonful of sugar, then opened yesterday's newspaper, flipping to the unfinished crossword. Clue 7, delayed gratification, 12 letters. The answer would come to me eventually. Part 6, the airport trap. By 2:15 p.m., I was nestled in my favorite armchair, sipping a fresh cup of Earl Grey and flipping through the Spokane Review Sunday. Yesterday's crossword, now complete, lay neatly on the coffee table. Delayed gratification is delay itself. My phone buzzed against the wooden table. Isabella again. I let it ring. December sunlight streamed through the living room window, warming the quiet space where I had spent so many nights alone, calculating the cost of my generosity. But today, the silence felt different. It wasn't emptiness. It was intention. 2:47 p.m. The phone rang again. This time, I read the preview. It was her daughter. Dad, where are you? My parents are home. I turned the phone face down and flipped to the sports section. The Seahawks had lost again. Some things never change. By 3:30, my phone had rung 6 times. I had finished the newspaper, brewed a second pot of tea, and started cleaning out the junk drawer in the kitchen. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you're not rushing around trying to serve people who treat you like their personal luggage porter. The 7th call came at 3:45. Instead of Isabella's name, a familiar number flashed across the screen. Maybe her parents had borrowed someone's phone at the airport. I let that one ring too. Outside, a neighbor was stringing up Christmas lights across his porch. His kids tore through the yard with that wild December energy only children can muster. Normal families doing normal things. No one was stranded, waiting for someone who was never coming. At 4:15, the calls started to come nonstop. Isabella. Then the unknown number. Then Isabella again. Over and over, the phone rang like an angry wasp trapped behind glass. I walked into the kitchen and unplugged the landline from the wall. Then I powered off my cell phone. Silence. Real, complete silence. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and heated up a can of tomato soup, the comfort food I hadn't allowed myself in months. Every grocery bill, every dollar had gone toward keeping up with their expectations, their lifestyle. But not today. The cheese had melted into that perfect golden crisp along the edges. The tomato soup steamed gently in my favorite mug, a chipped, old thing I refused to part with. Outside, the winter sun had begun its slow descent, casting long shadows across my backyard. Somewhere across town, I imagined three people standing in a crowded airport parking lot, bickering over taxis, wondering why their personal porter had dared to abandon them. The thought made the soup taste even better. Warm, rich, comforting in a way that went beyond food. By 5 p.m., dinner was done. The dishes were stacked neatly in the dishwasher. And for the first time in years, I stood in my own living room without a deadline, without a demand, without someone else's emergency claiming my night. I leaned back in the couch, slowly reaching for the remote control, wondering if I should watch something light or lose myself in an old noir. Then, a sound, not a knock, a pounding, not timid, not polite, a full-blown assault on the front door. I placed the teacup on the side table and stood up slowly. I already knew who it would be. With every thud, the anger behind it grew louder, sharp, unapologetic, furious. As I approached the door, the pounding escalated. Through the peephole, I saw them. Three silhouettes hunched together on my narrow porch like wolves circling wounded prey. They had come home, and they were not happy. I opened the door and came face to face with Cody Jenkins, his flushed face only inches from mine. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted, pushing past me into the living room without so much as a courtesy pause. "We waited at that goddamn airport for over 3 hours." Catherine stormed in behind him, her usually immaculate hair now a frizzy mess, lips pursed into a razor-thin line of contempt. "This is completely unacceptable behavior for someone your age, Dennis," she hissed. "It's barbaric." Isabella followed last, her designer coat crumpled, makeup streaked across her face. "You humiliated us. Do you even understand what you've done? My parents had to pay $40 for a cab because you decided to vacate your duties." Their angry barrage thundered through the room until my voice cut through it like a blade through silk. Cold, precise. Enough. They froze mid-sentence, stunned by the steel in my tone. Cody's face shifted from red to a mottled purple. "You don't get to demand anything here, pal, not after what you pulled today." "This is my house," I said quietly, still standing at the doorway, "and I want you to leave. Now." Catherine stepped forward, her voice dripping with the condescension she had perfected over decades of looking down on people like me. "Dennis, clearly you don't grasp the magnitude of the mistake you've made. My husband has connections, important ones, all over this city, professional, social. You can't just treat people like us this way and expect to walk away unscathed." I cut her off, looking straight into her eyes. "Maybe it's time someone did walk away. Consider this a lesson, not for me, but for you. A lesson in excessive entitlement and how terribly you treat those you believe are beneath you." Isabella's mouth dropped open. "A lesson? Who do you think you are, trying to teach someone a lesson? You're nothing, I'm just the last person who's no longer your personal bank account or chauffeur." I stepped aside, opening the door a little wider. "The lesson is over. You can leave now." Cody jabbed a finger at my chest, though he didn't quite have the nerve to touch me. "You have no idea who you're messing with, old man. I've been in this town longer than you've been breathing. I know people, important people, people who can make your life very, very difficult." "Is that a threat, Mr. Jenkins?" "It's a promise," he growled, his voice dropping to a hiss. "You think you can abandon elderly people at an airport without consequences?" He spat. "You're about to find out just how wrong you are." Catherine nodded beside him, her smile sharp enough to carve glass. "Actions have consequences, Dennis, and yours will be very public." Isabella tugged her father's sleeve. "Dad, let's go. This pathetic old man isn't worth our time." They filed out of my house like a defeated battalion, backs stiff with rage and humiliation. But at the last moment, Cody turned back at the threshold. "You'll regret this," he said, pointing one last time. "I guarantee it." I shut the door behind them and turned the lock with a satisfying click. Through the front window, I watched them pile back into their rental car, still bickering as they drove off into the December night, swallowed by the cold shadows. "Kwakuso truk nya, tonyin ha chen chuk lin chik se tue, vẫn còn cãi nhau chi chue khi phóng đi vào bóng đêm tháng 12. Bibongtoy Langleo Nuchung. The house felt instantly cleaner once they were gone, as if their presence had left a grime that was only now beginning to lift. But their parting words still hung in the sudden quiet. Public consequences, important people, connections. I returned to the living room and lifted my still warm teacup. For the first time in this whole ridiculous mess, I felt something that might have been worry. Yet even that was overpowered by something far stronger: anticipation. 3 days later, I was enjoying my morning coffee and scrolling through Spokane Review when I nearly spilled the whole cup. There it was, my own face staring back from page 3. The headline read, "Spokane businessman strands elderly couple at airport during holiday storm." I froze, hand clenched around the mug, unmoving. A black and white photo, an outdated headshot from my company website, probably 5 years old, had been slapped next to the article. And beneath it, a story so fabricated, so oozing with performative outrage, I felt my blood turn to ice before boiling into a slow, focused fury. According to the article, Cody and Catherine Jenkins, visiting their daughter for Christmas, had been abandoned at Spokane International Airport for over 4 hours on Sunday when a family member, Dennis Flores, failed to pick them up as previously arranged. The piece painted them as sympathetic victims, both in their 50s, a stretch, left to brave the elements while a winter storm warning loomed over the region. I nearly choked on my coffee. A storm warning? It had been 52 degrees up and sunny. "We just couldn't believe someone would do that to us," Cody was quoted, his words soaked in self-righteous grief. "We kept calling and calling, but Mr. Flores never answered. We were forced to take an expensive taxi in dangerous weather conditions." It was humiliating. The house felt cleaner after they left, as if their very presence had left a lingering stain that had finally faded. But their parting words still echoed in the sudden silence. Public consequences, important people, connections. I walked back into the living room and picked up the tea I had abandoned earlier. It was still warm in the cup. For the first time in this chaotic mess, I felt something close to worry. But that worry was quickly eclipsed by something stronger. Anticipation. At our age, this kind of treatment isn't just careless, it's dangerous. The article went on with more quotes about my supposed erratic behavior, concerns about my mental state, and painted Cody and Catherine as helpless victims, abandoned by a cruel old man who'd snapped without reason. There was no mention of being denied Christmas dinner. No context around Isabella's demands or years of financial exploitation. Just me, the villain, who had heartlessly abandoned a pair of elderly travelers during a make-believe snowstorm. I sat down, took a slow sip of coffee, and read the article again. Then a third time. The byline read Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor. I didn't recognize the name, but I recognized the play. Cody had called in a favor, leveraged his banking contacts to get this story placed where it would cause maximum damage. Clever. Extremely clever. They weren't just playing dirty, they were declaring war. I folded the newspaper carefully and set it aside, my mind shifting into that meticulous planning mode that had built my career from the ground up. This was no longer about airport pickups. It wasn't about Christmas dinner or mortgage repayments. This was about victory. I pulled out my laptop and started entering names into search engines. Cody Jenkins, Catherine Jenkins, Isabella Flores. Social media profiles, affiliations, habits, weaknesses, everything they had so naively left out in the open over the years. If they wanted to play chess, I'd show them what a real strategist looked like. I glanced at the calendar on the wall. December 18th, 7 days until Christmas. 7 days to orchestrate something they would never forget. The next 3 days, I lived in an entirely different world. Not the world where I was Dennis Flores, the aging man to be pitied or stomped on by ungrateful family. No, I lived in the world where I was Dennis Flores, the entrepreneur, the strategist, the man who built something from nothing and would not let a pack of entitled parasites destroy 40 years of sacrifice. My laptop became mission control. Social media profiles filled my browser tabs like playing cards in a high-stakes poker game. Cody Jenkins, former First National Bank executive, Spokane Country Club member. treasurer of the Inland Northwest Business Leaders Association, a man who had spent his life in positions of trust and influence, a man with a great deal to lose. Catherine's Instagram painted the kind of life that only exists in lifestyle magazines, a digital scrapbook of luxury, elegance, and effortless charm. There were charity luncheons where she smiled in wide-brimmed hats, wine tastings in rustic vineyards, and perfectly timed vacation photos in Coeur d'Alene, all under soft filters and carefully chosen captions. One photo showed her sipping champagne in a cashmere wrap, tagged "A Blessed Life," though the blessings I knew were not hers to begin with. Each post was a carefully staged performance, designed to evoke envy and admiration, with friends and acquaintances flooding the comments with praise. "Gorgeous as always," is Catherine's day. "You're living the dream." But none of them knew the truth, that the dream was funded, quite literally, by me. Isabella's Facebook, by contrast, didn't bother with illusion. It simply betrayed them through carelessness. She posted about our beautiful home, proudly showing off the same kitchen I had paid to remodel. There were gleeful check-ins at expensive restaurants and spa retreats dated from the same months I was quietly covering their overdue utility bills. She didn't even try to hide the timeline. Last week, she had excitedly written, "So thrilled for Christmas dinner with the family. We're going all out this year." The "we" in question, of course, referred to the people who had shut me out of my own home. Her post ended with a string of emojis, wine glasses, sparkles, hearts, and a hashtag that stung, #family first. The narcissism, the entitlement, the oblivious confidence. It was breathtaking, but it was Michael who gave away the final piece without even realizing it. On his LinkedIn profile, buried among endorsements and job history fluff, was a recent connection. Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor at the Spokane Review, a woman I had never met, but whose words had just slashed through my reputation like a sharpened knife. That editorial, cold and elegant, was not the result of journalistic curiosity. It was an orchestrated attack. Michael had made sure it landed exactly where it would hurt the most. And now I saw the full picture. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the overwhelming evidence glowing on my screen. These people had made 3 fatal mistakes. First, they completely underestimated me. Second, they launched their attack publicly, which meant I was free to retaliate just as publicly. And third, they documented their entire luxurious lives online, creating a pristine archive of hypocrisy and self-deception. They gave me all the ammunition I needed, gift-wrapped in filters and hashtags. I clicked open Patricia Morrison's profile. 43 years old, journalism degree from Washington State University, 15 years writing for local papers, and not a single connection to banking or finance. That told me one thing. Cody reached out to her directly or through someone in his web of business contacts. And sure enough, after 5 minutes scanning a few local business directories, I had my confirmation. 3 shared contacts between Cody and Patricia's editor. That article wasn't some spontaneous piece of journalism. No, it was seeded, nurtured, and published with intent. They were all in on it. And they thought I'd just sit there and take it. Amateurs. All of them. I opened a new document and began to type. Not a rebuttal, not a defensive statement. Something stronger. A timeline. A cold surgical narrative built on facts, documents, and bank statements. 5 years of financial support, all neatly cataloged. Receipts, voided checks, monthly transfers. The $47,000 down payment on their house from a home equity loan I took out in 2018. A kitchen remodel, paid in full from my retirement account. And every grocery bill, utility payment, and school expense I quietly covered while they posted pictures of wine tastings and vacations in Coeur d'Alene. I leaned back in my chair, eyes scanning the mountain of evidence laid out across my screen. These people, Cody, Isabella, Catherine, had made 3 unforgivable mistakes. First, they completely underestimated me. Second, they launched their attack in public, which meant I had every right to respond just as publicly. And third, their greatest sin of all, they documented every indulgent, pretentious moment of their lavish lifestyle online. curating a perfect catalog of hypocrisy. I clicked open Patricia Morrison's profile, 43 years old, journalism degree from WSU, 15 years of local reporting experience, no ties to banking, no background in finance, which could only mean one thing. Cody had sought her out, most likely through someone in his expanding business network. 5 minutes of digging through the local business registry revealed exactly what I needed. 3 shared contacts between Cody and Patricia's editor. This article wasn't born from random investigation. It was planted, nurtured, strategically executed. A carefully plotted strike. And now it was amateur hour. I opened a new document and began typing. Not a rebuttal, but something far more powerful. A timeline. 5 years of financial support, detailed in bank statements, receipts, canceled checks. The $47,000 down payment on their home came directly from the equity in mine. Isabella's dream kitchen, that granite countertop she had to have, $18,000 on my credit card, 60 monthly payments, $2,800 each. That's $168,000, nearly $250,000. More than I've spent on myself in the past decade. My phone buzzed, a message from an unfamiliar number. Isabella, maybe, trying a different angle. I ignored it and kept working. By the evening, I had everything compiled into a binder so thick it could suffocate a horse. Bank statements, receipts, social media screenshots of them flaunting purchases I funded, and a printed copy of the Hatchet Job article, annotated in red ink with every lie and manipulation marked. I glanced up at the calendar. December 24th circled in red, not because it was Christmas, but because it was the perfect day for justice. According to Isabella's Facebook event, they were hosting a Christmas dinner for 12. Family, friends, neighbors. The same people who read the Spokane Review and shaped their opinions around what they thought they knew. They deserved to know the truth. I shut the laptop and walked into the kitchen, where my old DSLR camera waited in a dusty cabinet, purchased years ago to document construction projects for my business. But this time it would be used for something entirely different. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve, and tomorrow Cody Jenkins and his perfect little empire would learn what happens when you declare war on someone who actually knows how to fight. Christmas Eve morning was bleak and bitterly cold, the kind of Spokane winter day that made people grateful for warm homes and tight-knit family gatherings. Unfortunately, I wasn't welcome in either, but I had a different kind of invitation to deliver. I arranged the evidence like a lawyer preparing for trial, bank statements sorted by year, each monthly payment highlighted in yellow, receipts laid out in chronological order, showing how I'd subsidized every corner of their curated lifestyle, printed photos from their social media feeds, Isabella's new jewelry, their sun-drenched vacations, the expensive Christmas decorations currently glittering on their house. I had copied it all, 12 times. 1 packet per dinner guest. On top of each stack sat the article, the one that started it all, with my red pen notes bleeding into the margins. Lies were marked next to Cody's quotes about dangerous behavior. False, my supposed volatility. Devoid of context, no mention of the 5 years of financial backing that preceded it. I wore my best suit, the navy one I wore to Maria's funeral, pressed and immaculate, ready for another farewell. Today, I would say goodbye to the man who used to be a welcome mat for his entire family. Tonight, I would be the one commanding respect. At exactly 6:30 p.m., I loaded my briefcase with meticulously prepared evidence and drove to Kendall Yards. Their house glowed with warm light, cars lining the street and crowding both curbs. Through the front window, I could see the silhouettes of people moving around the dining room, Isabella playing hostess in the home my money helped pay for. I parked across the street and glanced at the time. 6:45, right on schedule. Late enough for everyone to be seated at the dinner table. Early enough that they'd still be eating the main course. No one could easily slip away. The front door wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. Isabella loved to brag about how safe their neighborhood was, how they didn't need to worry about security like people in more dangerous parts of town. I stepped inside quietly. A wave of warm air hit my face, followed by the vibrant sounds of conversation and laughter coming from the dining room. Then I heard Catherine say, "But darling, our family doesn't act like that." Someone responded, and the room burst into laughter again. My family. After everything they had done to silence and exclude me, I stepped into the dining room with my briefcase gripped firmly in hand. The room went still. 12 heads turned toward me in unison, and for a brief moment, silence hung in the air like a blade. I scanned the room, noting every reaction: shock, confusion, fear. Isabella, frozen in place, held a crystal wine glass delicately between her fingers, the rim still hovering inches from her lips. Michael's complexion drained of color, his fork mid-air as if paralyzed. Cody and Catherine? Their mouths parted slightly, the kind of expression reserved for things that shouldn't exist. Ghosts, scandals, and uncomfortable truths. It was exactly the moment I had envisioned. Good evening, everyone, I said with a measured calmness, like a host arriving fashionably late. I walked over to the marble sideboard and gently placed my briefcase on top, the soft click of the clasps echoing louder than it should have in the stunned silence. I hope no one minds if I join you all for this festive little Christmas dinner. Isabella found her voice first. Dennis, this is completely inappropriate, she said, her tone tight with panic and embarrassment. You need to leave. Right now. I gave her a small, almost apologetic smile. Actually, I said as I turned the brass locks on my case and opened it with a soft snap, I think your guests deserve a little context before dessert. I pulled out the first bundle of documents, thick, neatly bound, and printed on crisp white paper. The kind of paper that speaks louder than words. They should know who really paid for this dinner, for this house, and for the lifestyle you've all been admiring tonight. A woman I didn't recognize, likely one of Catherine's charity friends, dressed in pearls and perfume, leaned forward with growing interest, like she'd just discovered the evening was about to get far more entertaining than any white elephant gift exchange. Someone at the table whispered, "What is he talking about?" The question floated in the air like smoke. Isabella, is he all right? Isabella's voice cracked. He's not well. He's clearly going through something. She turned sharply toward Michael. Call someone, now. But it was already too late. I had moved around the table, slow and deliberate, placing a document folder in front of each guest like a host handing out menus. The silence was absolute, so thick you could hear the rustle of paper as it touched linen. These, I said, projecting my voice just enough of you to fill the room, are bank records. 5 full years of financial support. Every transaction, every transfer, every check. Just the mortgage contributions alone, $168,000. That's not even including the initial down payment, the renovations, the custom furniture, the luxury appliances, basically everything you see around you tonight, from the chandelier above your heads to the imported wine in your glasses. I let the words sink in, watching their faces. There was no going back now. This was the moment the carefully curated illusion collapsed. I leaned back in my chair, eyes scanning the mountain of evidence laid out across my screen. These people, Cody, Isabella, Catherine, had made 3 unforgivable mistakes. First, they completely underestimated me. Second, they launched their attack in public, which meant I had every right to respond just as publicly. And third, their greatest sin of all, they documented every indulgent, pretentious moment of their lavish lifestyle online, curating a perfect catalog of hypocrisy. I clicked open Patricia Morrison's profile. 43 years old, journalism degree from WSU, 15 years of local reporting experience, no ties to banking, no background in finance, which could only mean one thing. Cody had sought her out, most likely through someone in his expanding business network. 5 minutes of digging through the local business registry revealed exactly what I needed. 3 shared contacts between Cody and Patricia's editor. This article wasn't born from random investigation. It was planted, nurtured, strategically executed, a carefully plotted strike, and now it was amateur hour. I opened a new document and began typing. Not a rebuttal, but something far more powerful. A timeline. 5 years of financial support, detailed in bank statements, receipts, canceled checks. The $47,000 down payment on their home came directly from the equity in mine. Isabella's dream kitchen, that granite countertop she had to have, $18,000 on my credit card, 60 monthly payments, $2,800 each. That's $168,000, nearly $250,000, more than I've spent on myself in the past decade. My phone buzzed, a message from an unfamiliar number. Isabella, maybe, trying a different angle? I ignored it and kept working. By the evening, I had everything compiled into a binder so thick it could suffocate a horse. Bank statements, receipts, social media screenshots of them flaunting purchases I funded, and a printed copy of the Hatchet Job article, annotated in red ink with every lie and manipulation marked. I glanced up at the calendar. December 24th circled in red, not because it was Christmas, but because it was the perfect day for justice. According to Isabella's Facebook event, they were hosting a Christmas dinner for 12. Family, friends, neighbors. The same people who read the Spokane Review and shape their opinions around what they thought they knew. They deserved to know the truth. I shut the laptop and walked into the kitchen, where my old DSLR camera waited in a dusty cabinet, purchased years ago to document construction projects for my business. But this time it would be used for something entirely different. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve, and tomorrow Cody Jenkins and his perfect little empire would learn what happens when you declare war on someone who actually knows how to fight. Christmas Eve morning was bleak and bitterly cold, the kind of Spokane winter day that made people grateful for warm homes and tight-knit family gatherings. Unfortunately, I wasn't welcome in either, but I had a different kind of invitation to deliver. I arranged the evidence like a lawyer preparing for trial, bank statements sorted by year, each monthly payment highlighted in yellow, receipts laid out in chronological order, showing how I'd subsidized every corner of their curated lifestyle, printed photos from their social media feeds, Isabella's new jewelry, their sun-drenched vacations, the expensive Christmas decorations currently glittering on their house. I had copied it all, 12 times, one packet per dinner guest. On top of each stack sat the article, the one that started it all, with my red pen notes bleeding into the margins. Lies were marked next to Cody's quotes about dangerous behavior. False. My supposed volatility? Devoid of context, no mention of the 5 years of financial backing that preceded it. I wore my best suit, the navy one I wore to Maria's funeral, pressed and immaculate, ready for another farewell. Today, I would say goodbye to the man who used to be a welcome mat for his entire family. Tonight, I would be the one commanding respect. At exactly 6:30 p.m., I loaded my briefcase with meticulously prepared evidence and drove to Kendall Yards. Their house glowed with warm light, cars lining the street and crowding both curbs. Through the front window, I could see the silhouettes of people moving around the dining room, Isabella playing hostess in the home my money helped pay for. I parked across the street and glanced at the time. 6:45. Right on schedule. Late enough for everyone to be seated at the dinner table. Early enough that they'd still be eating the main course. No one could easily slip away. The front door wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. Isabella loved to brag about how safe their neighborhood was. How they didn't need to worry about security like people in more dangerous parts of town. I stepped inside quietly. A wave of warm air hit my face, followed by the vibrant sounds of conversation and laughter coming from the dining room. Then I heard Catherine say, "But darling, our family doesn't act like that." Someone responded and the room burst into laughter again. My family, after everything they had done to silence and exclude me. I stepped into the dining room with my briefcase gripped firmly in hand. The room went still. 12 heads turned toward me in unison. And for a brief moment, silence hung in the air like a blade. I scanned the room, noting every reaction. Shock, confusion, fear. Isabella, frozen in place, held a crystal wine glass delicately between her fingers, the rim still hovering inches from her lips. Michael's complexion drained of color, his fork mid-air as if paralyzed. Cody and Catherine? Their mouths parted slightly, the kind of expression reserved for things that shouldn't exist. Ghosts, scandals, and uncomfortable truths. It was exactly the moment I had envisioned. "Good evening, everyone," I said with a measured calmness, like a host arriving fashionably late. I walked over to the marble sideboard and gently placed my briefcase on top. the soft click of the clasps echoing louder than it should have in the stunned silence. I hope no one minds if I join you all for this festive little Christmas dinner. Isabella found her voice first. Dennis, this is completely inappropriate, she said, her tone tight with panic and embarrassment. You need to leave, right now. I gave her a small, almost apologetic smile. Actually, and I said as I turned the brass locks on my case and opened it with a soft snap, I think your guests deserve a little context before dessert. I pulled out the first bundle of documents, thick, neatly bound, and printed on crisp white paper. The kind of paper that speaks louder than words. They should know who really paid for this dinner, for this house, and for the lifestyle you've all been admiring tonight. A woman I didn't recognize, likely one of Catherine's charity friends, dressed in pearls and perfume, leaned forward with growing interest, like she'd just discovered the evening was about to get far more entertaining than any white elephant gift exchange. Someone at the table whispered, "What is he talking about?" The question floated in the air like smoke. Isabella, is he all right? Isabella's voice cracked. He's not well. He's clearly going through something. She turned sharply toward Michael. Call someone, now. But it was already too late. I had moved around the table, slow and deliberate, placing a document folder in front of each guest like a host handing out menus. The silence was absolute, so thick you could hear the rustle of paper as it touched linen. These, I said, projecting my voice just enough to fill the room, are bank records. 5 full years of financial support. Every transaction, every transfer, every check. Just the mortgage contributions alone, $168,000. That's not even including the initial down payment, the renovations, the custom furniture, the luxury appliances, basically everything you see around you tonight, from the chandelier above your heads to the imported wine in your glasses. I let the words sink in, watching their faces. There was no going back now. This was the moment the carefully curated illusion collapsed. The American dream, in its quiet, stubborn form. It's beautiful, he murmured, almost to himself. This is what happens when you spend money on yourself instead of people who won't spend it wisely. I gave a small nod, settling into the plush armchair I'd waited years to own. Thanks, I said simply. Coffee? He shook his head and sat down on the edge of the sofa like he didn't quite believe he was allowed to rest there. His voice cracked slightly when he spoke again. Dad, I want you to know how sorry I am. For everything. Christmas dinner, the article, the way Isabella treated me. Just say it. Let it out. I didn't know Cody made it all up. I swear, Dad, I didn't. When I finally found out, he had already messed everything up. He ruffled his hair, trying to look innocent. But I could see it in his eyes. God, Dad. The things they said behind your back, the way they talked about our family, about Mom's memory. It was cruel. It was like you didn't matter anymore. I clenched my jaw at the mention of Maria's name, but I kept my voice steady, even though it felt like a blade twisting in my chest. And what exactly did they say about your mother, I asked? That she knew her place better than I ever did? That she understood boundaries? They couldn't even look me in the eye, not one of them. And I should have stood up for you. I should have shut them down years ago. I should have made them stop. Yes, I said firmly, without blinking. You should have. We sat in silence. For a long, heavy moment, neither of us spoke. The air was thick with years of regret. 5 whole years where everything had gone unsaid, where every birthday, every holiday, every memory had been drowned in pride and silence. Outside, I heard the low hum of a neighbor mowing their lawn. It was the sound of a normal Thursday evening in a normal neighborhood where sons didn't keep their fathers from Christmas dinner, where this kind of conversation should have happened years ago. The house is being foreclosed, Michael said finally. His voice cracked, and for the first time in years, he looked smaller, like the boy I once carried on my shoulders. I already know, I replied. We can't keep up without him, he admitted, and there was something raw in the way he said it, like he hated that truth more than anything. Without you, Dad, we're done. I can't cover the payments. We're out of time. He hesitated, like he just realized how ridiculous that sounded after everything. After years of letting his in-laws treat me like dirt. After shutting me out. I've been sending money every month, Michael, I said, leaning forward so he had no choice but to meet my eyes. While your wife's family threw me away like I was nothing, I know how it looks, he whispered. I know. Do you have any idea how much money I've sent you over the last 5 years? My voice didn't rise. It wasn't angry. It was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that follows when all the excuses are gone and only truth remains. He sat across from me at the kitchen table. The same table I'd eaten breakfast at as a boy. The same one where he once taught me how to fold napkins like a proper gentleman. But now his hands were shaking slightly as he cupped the chipped coffee mug. He didn't answer. Not really. He just gave a slow, weary nod. It wasn't agreement. It was resignation. Defeat. Isabella went through the numbers after Christmas, I continued, watching him flinch slightly at her name. She added everything up. The mortgage payments we've covered, the down payment we gave you without asking for a dime back, all the other little emergencies you and Diane needed help with. He didn't interrupt. He never did when the truth became too sharp to touch. It wasn't just a few thousand here and there. It was over 200 grand. I paused, then said it again, clearer, harsher, because he needed to hear it for what it really was. $237,468. I saw his face tighten, almost like he'd been slapped. I know the number because I finally sat down and added it all up, Dad. I did what I should have done a long time ago, and when I did, something broke inside me. He closed his eyes, and for a moment I could see the years on him. The man who once seemed too big for his flannel shirts now looked too small for the room. Too small for the truth he helped create. Dad, I'm sorry, I really am. I didn't know what else to do. I stopped myself. I thought maybe you'd change. I thought maybe helping you would bring us closer again. But I couldn't say it because we both knew it wasn't true anymore. He looked up, and for a second his voice cracked under the weight of his own words. You can't fix this, son. The money, it's gone. It was gone before you ever realized it. But then his voice grew quieter, sadder, but more importantly, the years are gone too. He looked away, like he couldn't stand to meet my eyes. 5 years I could have used to rebuild what we lost. 5 years I spent pretending I still had a family, while letting Diane drag me deeper into her fantasies. I thought I was doing what was right, but I see now I wasn't. He sounded old, not in age, but in regret. The kind of regret that sits heavy in your chest when the time to make it right has already passed. He looked back at me, and there was something fragile in his eyes, like a child asking not to be left behind. But maybe we can try again. Maybe we can still rebuild something, you and I. For a moment, I almost wanted to say yes, to pretend there was still time to fix what we'd let rot between us. But then he said it. You think maybe you could help with the mortgage for a little while longer? Just until Diane. That was it. The final blow. The flicker of hope that had briefly lit up in his eyes vanished the second I didn't respond. He knew. We both knew. I think we're going to lose everything, Dad. The house, Isabella's trust. Her parents already think I'm a fool. And honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do next. My voice cracked, just for a second. He reached out across the table, but I didn't take his hand. I didn't need comfort. I needed clarity. You'll figure it out, Michael, I said softly. Not to hurt him, not out of spite. You'll figure it out, just like I had to figure out how to live without a son who respected me. And for the first time in years, he had nothing left to say. Just like how you learned to spend Christmas alone while I celebrated with people who thought you were beneath them. Michael began to cry, not the noisy, dramatic kind, but quiet tears, the kind that only fall when a man has run out of options and explanations. He didn't wipe them away at first. He just sat there, his body deflated, his voice almost a whisper. I've lost you, haven't I? I chose them over you, and now I've lost you for good. I looked at him for a long moment. This was the man I raised, the boy I once read stories to under flickering bedside lamps, the teenager I stayed up late waiting for you, the adult I had sacrificed for in silence. And yet, somewhere along the way, he had allowed himself to believe that his father wasn't worthy, that I wasn't enough, That the validation of his in-laws mattered more than the man who built his foundation. "Michael," I said finally, my voice thick but steady, "you didn't lose me. You betrayed me. There's a difference." He winced, his lips trembled, and then he raised the back of his hand to his eyes and wiped the tears away like a boy ashamed of being seen. "Is there any way," he asked, barely audible, "any way you could forgive me?" I nodded slowly. "I already did, months ago, and I meant it." Forgiveness had come to me in the quiet hours, in the solitude of mornings when I realized that anger had grown heavier than grief. But forgiveness didn't mean amnesia, and it certainly didn't mean I would return to playing the role of benefactor to a life built on conditions and polite neglect. But forgiveness, I added gently, doesn't mean going back to the way things were. It doesn't mean pretending none of this ever happened. And it doesn't mean I keep paying for a lifestyle where gratitude is a price I'm expected to beg for. Michael looked confused, wounded, desperate. Then what does it mean? I stood slowly, walking over to the fireplace where two photographs sat side by side. One of Maria, gentle, graceful, forever frozen in time. And beside her, a newer photo. Me and Rosa, her children, and her elderly mother at Easter dinner. It had been our first real holiday together, a celebration where I wasn't invited out of obligation or pity, but because they genuinely wanted me there. "It means," I said, turning to him, "that if you want a relationship with me now, you have to build it, from the ground up, with time, with respect, with the understanding that it's not my job to earn your affection. It's your job to treat me like I matter. It means making choices based on what's right, not what's easy." I turned to face him again. "And it means that next time when someone, your wife, your in-laws, or anyone else, tries to erase me from a family gathering, you'll remember who actually behaved like family." He nodded slowly, maybe truly understanding for the first time that respect isn't a birthright. It's earned and recognized. "The house," he asked quietly, "it's not my problem anymore, is it?" I sat down again, a weight lifting from my chest that had been there for years. "You're a grown man, Michael. Handle it the way grown men handle their business. Get a job that covers your bills. Sell the house and buy something within your means. Stop living above your reality and expecting others to fund your fantasy." He stood slowly, but this time his back was straight, not beaten, but aware, not broken, but waking up. "You were right about everything," he said. "I know that now." He moved toward the door, then stopped, turned back. His voice was softer now, less defensive, more real. "Dad, I saw you at Christmas dinner. How proud you looked. I just want to say, I'm proud of you, ashamed and angry at myself, but proud of you." "Good," I said. "Maybe there's still hope for both of us." When he left, I poured myself a generous glass of good whiskey and stepped out to the back porch. Not because I was escaping anything, but because for the first time in years I was simply at peace. Spring is arriving in Spokane, the trees are budding, and the air is warm with promise. In just 4 months, I'll be turning 63. Maria has been gone for 8 years, and for 5 of those years, I wasted my time being a doormat for people who never truly understood sacrifice. But no more. I won't waste another day. My phone buzzed, a message from Rosa. "Sunday dinner. The kids want to show me their school project." I smiled and texted back. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Funny how family, real family, turns out to be the people who actually want you there. Everything else is just an expensive performance. And I've stopped buying tickets to plays where I'm not welcome on stage. The whiskey in my hand tastes like freedom. And the future ahead, bright, open, and exactly how I want it. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video. Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. And when you're ready for the next chapter, just click the box right up here on the screen.